Hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast here from your friends at Radio 2. My word, what a sinful bunch you are. Here comes this week's concise collection, including aquatic antics in America, a bouncing bonce bathed in blue, the blunder of the beast, and the pain of Percy Pimple's purser. It will all become clear. Here are your stories. This is another Drive Time Confession from BBC Radio 2. Don't forget the Confessions podcast. You can get the whole lot. bbc.co.uk/Radio 2. Send your confession, please. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. This one from Andrew. Dear Father Simon, the Forgiving Collective, after becoming a recent convert, I feel I must take heed of your request to write in and tell you a tale of woe. My name is Andrew, and this is a tale on behalf of 4 people in the United States of America. My story takes us back to 2002. I was then, as I am now, in the Army Reserve, used to be called the Territorial Army. This year, a company group of about 100 soldiers had the exciting prospect of training with the U.S. National Guard in Portland, Oregon for a period of 2 weeks. Well, we finally arrived late in the USA, courtesy of the RAF, or TWA, as they're known in Army circles, which is not Transworld Airlines, but Teeny-weeny Airways. See, it's just a little bit of rivalry just happening all the time. We were met by the fine chaps from the National Guard and taken to their barracks in a town called Eugene. We only had a day of weapon familiarization and then some fitness tests, and then we were out in the high desert for a 10-day exercise with our National Guard colleagues. We then had a couple of days off to sample the delights of Oregon, whitewater rafting, socializing, that kind of thing, and county fairs, where we were paraded around as some weird group of people from another planet. However, we were looked after by our tobacco-chewing National Guard soldiers. It was a wonderful thing in the United States. We're all enjoying ourselves being that little bit different from the locals. It did, however, get rather galling to be to be asked by everyone who spoke to us if we were Australian or Canadian or even French in some cases. For the few Americans who did spot that we were British, the next question was invariably, do you know the Queen? Well, after a while, eventually, we all just said, yes, of course we did. We all know Her Majesty, and she talks to her subjects often. On our last day off, the officer commanding, let's call him Major Paul, along with the second in command, Captain Timothy, and the 2 platoon commanders, Lieutenants Chris and myself, were told that we would leave the rest of the company to have whatever fun they wanted in town, while we would visit a local restaurant for dinner. As we're all firm friends, this was fine by me. Well, we found a local eatery and we had a few beers before ordering. A very attractive young lady came to take our order by the name of Connie. She asked us who we were, and after the usual guessing game of where we were from, she went away to place our order with the chef. She then came back and proceeded to ask questions of who we were and what we were doing in Oregon. Well, Paul piped up and said we were part of the Great Britain water polo team, and we're in Oregon for the World Championships in 3 days' time. She was very impressed and went away to ask her colleagues if anyone knew this competition was taking place, which strangely no one did, as it didn't exist, and he'd just made it up. Well, the meal was going well, and then the beer was flowing, and back came Connie with the interrogation about water polo. Well, Timothy now took centre stage, and he said he was sorry, but he was a little bit upset today, as the training session had gone badly wrong, and his favourite horse had drowned.
Oh, no.
Connie looked a little bit confused, and I added, it can have terrible consequences if the snorkel or goggles slip off the horse while in the pool. Well, now Chris jumped in on the act, adding, yes, and if the flippers come off the hooves, that can have a catastrophic effect. Well, Timothy had clearly acted in school, as he really put on an act of devastation at this point. In fact, his performance was worthy of an Oscar. Connie surely couldn't believe this and would realise that it was just a bunch of daft English blokes having a laugh. Well, Timothy was on a thespian roll. He continued to add that it was his favourite horse that had drowned, but Team GB would now have to pull out of the all-important championships, and we would let the country down. We were all sniggering, as this was all part of the fun, and looking at Connie, she seemed to be welling up and was actually a little bit upset about the drowned horse. Could she really believe water polo was played with horses wearing snorkels, goggles and flippers? Surely not. Anyway, towards the end of our meal and a few beers later, I think there's an awful lot, I'm not sure if anyone's counting the beers, but there's quite a few, Connie came back and informed us that she called her brother, who owned horses, and was prepared to help us out in our quest for the World Championships. Well, this had all gone too far. What had we done? What to do next? How could a joke turn to this? We surely had to front up and confess. Well, we didn't. It was only when a man on a horse turned up outside the restaurant that it became very clear, very quickly, what we had to do. Another waitress was called over, the bill was paid with a generous tip, and off we went while Connie was out the back. In other words, we ran away. So now is the time then, and hopefully she'll hear about it. Father Simon, we need forgiveness, please, for all four of us leading Connie down the slippery garden path and convincing her that we're in deep trouble. We all did feel pretty bad that she believed us. Well, you know, not for long. Also to her brother, who was kind enough to come to the restaurant with his horse to help us out. As we didn't meet him, we assume he was probably miffed that the limeys had gone and Connie was upset about a drowned horse. Anyway, we also need to apologise to the special relationship in case it was damaged by our nefarious activities. You're seeking forgiveness, Andrew. I don't know if people have played this water polo. You would imagine most people would realise that water polo had nothing to do with horses, but hey, this was the joke and Connie fell for it. Horse, line and sinker? No, I don't think that's going to work. But anyway, then brother turns up with your actual horse. What do we think, Sister
Well, I
Rebecca?
think Connie was a little bit gullible, wasn't she? But actually, her brother really should have... I mean, if he owned a horse, wouldn't he be likely to know that horses don't do water polo, especially not with snorkels and that kind of thing?
And goggles.
And turning up on his horse. I mean, you know, the two of them. But I think, you know, I just think it's a bit mean to prey on people who are gullible, because I'm really gullible and people do that kind of thing to me the whole time. And it's really upsetting when you realise that you're being a bit stupid. Very stupid. So,
what's the most stupid you've ever been?
Oh, there are scores of examples.
Hey, we should do a team confession week. We should do another team confession. Don't waste it there.
I have faith in other people for some reason.
Okay.
So I think it was a bit mean on Connie, and she probably was really upset when they found it was all a joke. So I'm not going to forgive you, Andrew.
I think there might be water polo confessions, actually. I'm thinking this is quite good. Horse-based confessions. Anyway, Brother Matthew, what do you think?
Connie and Connie's brother are not hardly the sharpest tools in the box. What I can't get over is the fact that Connie's obviously been on the phone to her brother and saying, oh yeah, one of the horses has drowned, so do you want to put yours in? Oh yeah, fine, yeah, I'll bring mine along, no problem. Unbelievable, what's he doing? And then he's saying, oh yes, and they have to wear snorkels and flippers.
So it's very generous, actually.
It's very generous. It's a bit foolhardy on the behalf of his horses. But I am not going to forgive, because I think they should have followed it through. I think they should have gone outside and tried to get a snorkel to fit onto the horse, and then said, oh no, it won't fit. Oh well, never mind, your horse isn't good enough. And doing that, rather than running away, you should have stayed and seen it through. So I'm not going to forgive.
This is from Joe. Simon, Father Simon, and the forgiving few plus Matt, whose forgiveness, I believe, will be guaranteed.
Oh, really?
Yes. Forgiveness.
Oh,
Normally
yes.
people are saying, I'm not going to get forgiven by Matt today,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think Joe is absolutely right. Forgiveness guaranteed.
Really, it's lying to kids. That's what I'm saying.
I come, says Joe, from a very religious family and have always been the black sheep. Every family has one. I just think it helps the rest to feel better about themselves. Anyway, back in the 80s, as a teenager, I was forced to attend church on a weekly basis. I could either attend a local church where our family would lower the average age to 95, or go to the church that met at the local conference centre where my dad worked. The conference centre was way more up to date. Sometimes they even used drums to go with the hymns. They were really with it at this place. Some people who heard the sermons there were really affected by what they heard and were able to purchase a cassette of the message to help them reflect on what they had learned. At this conference centre, I found a small soundproof booth which was used to record the sermon, and after getting to know the gentleman in charge, let's call him Bob, I was invited to learn how things worked. Well, Bob and I sat upstairs and loaded 2 cassette tapes into 2 machines, a C90 and a C60. If it was going to be a short sermon, it would fit onto the side of the C60. If it was a longer, then a C90 could hold it. I couldn't help but notice a third tape player, which was on the shelf. What's that machine for? I asked. Bob explained it was a spare machine to play backing music through the big speakers if someone needed a special number. But normally this reserve machine stayed switched off. Now, Father Simon, the popular heavy metal combo Iron Maiden had just released their latest single, The Number of the Beast. I'd heard it on the radio, and my mate had lent me a cassette of the album. I know that everybody knows exactly where this is going, but let's let the story unwind. I only had a simple old cassette player at home with the old white plastic earpiece, and it only went in one ear. How I wanted to hear it in thunderous, glorious stereo through fabulous headphones. You know, like the ones at the conference centre. Oh, the temptation, says Joe. 2 weeks into the summer holidays, my colleague, as he had become, announced that he would be away next week and asked if I could step in and record the service. Well, this was a dream come true, and I was entrusted to record the sermon and would be in the booth alone. No special music requested, so the extra tape machine was available. Result. Next Sunday arrived, and I set up all the usual tape machines to record the sermon. Checked all the levels to make sure the sound was really good quality, and then I got ready. The service started. There was a welcome, there was a hymn, there was a reading. There was a hymn, prayers, hymn, and then the sermon. I put in the C90 cassette, just in case it was going to be a long one. The preacher climbed up into the pulpit. I pressed play and record. All fine. I didn't need to listen to the sermon. I'd heard it before. I had another message to listen to. I placed the Iron Maiden album into the spare cassette player, plugged in the headphones, and waited to bask in the glorious music, ready for my senses to be blown away by Invaders, Children of the Damned, and The Prisoner, track after track of rock to look forward to. Didn't quite work out like that. What I had failed to notice when I arrived was that soft organ music was playing in the meeting room, but no one was actually at the organ. In fact, some numpty had put a cassette of organ music into the spare deck in the soundproof booth and hadn't switched off the speakers in the hall when he'd done putting out the hymn books. The cassette had been ejected, but the speakers were still active, and I didn't know. With the headphones on inside a soundproof booth, I couldn't hear my music now playing through the whole building at full volume, which probably needed for the organ music. It was not needed for Iron Maiden. While the preacher was preaching the good news, Bruce Dickinson was screaming about pirates, pillaging and looting. On the one hand, the words of St. Paul. So this is the scene in church, and it's a fairly chaotic one. The words, in case you don't know, they're coming in from the sea. They've come the enemy. The battle has to be won. Invaders pillaging, invaders looting, and so on. It goes on to the number of the beast, and I think "Hallowed Be Thy Name" is the last track. That would have been a good one. Anyway, Father Simon, it took a couple of minutes for an elderly parishioner to reach the booth, looking somewhat shaken and more than a little startled. She looked as though, in fact, she wanted to run to the hills. That was a Nigel Barden one, I think. So, Father Simon, I beg forgiveness, not from the preacher, who should know that variety's the spice of life, but from my colleague Bob, who literally had to face the music on his return for letting an idiot like myself loose in his soundproof booth. I'd also like to beg forgiveness from the poor teenagers who had to sit through an extra 10 minutes of sermon whilst the preacher gathered his thoughts again and used both sides of the C90. Now age 46, says Joe, I still love rock music and have been to many rock festivals with my daughter. Bring your daughter to the slaughter, and I am waiting for my 6-month-old granddaughter to grow up so that she can come moshing with me as well. Okay, so it's Joe's tale of being in the soundproof booth, and the vicar just wanted his sermon recorded, and instead, through the speakers, a little bit of Iron Maiden. Sister Rebecca, what do you say?
It had to be Number of the Beast, didn't it? It just which is it not 666 Number of the Beast?
Yes,
yes. That is just an extraordinary story.
Yes.
It couldn't be choral music or a bit of Joni Mitchell or something, Iron Maiden. I think it's a very, very funny confession, and for that reason and that reason alone, and because Joe didn't mean to do it, yes, I'm going to forgive.
If you want the full version, by the way, of that track, I think you better suggest it as a mosh, and it's mosh time tomorrow. Anyway, now, Joe is fairly certain that you're going to...
Yes, yeah. Joe's right to be confident. We love this because of the inappropriateness of it, but I wonder whether, sort of, over the first few opening bars of this track, whether there were actually people in the congregation going, yes, no, I can see why they're playing this music now. The message that's coming through from this, very fitting, very, very... Actually, this isn't working at all. Why are they playing Iron Maiden?
What, you mean this?
Yes,
that one.
They were going, yes, no, they're coming in, the enemy. Yes, no, I see what he's trying to say. Wasted years, absolutely. So yes, I'm going to definitely forgive. Bit of Iron Maiden, but put it this way: any Iron Maiden in the confession, definitely forgiven.
Tonight's confession comes from Fat Lad. That's how it's signed, and I don't think we've changed it, so that's who it is. We're assuming that isn't your first name or second name anyway, and you just like to be called Fat Lad. Dear Father Simon and the Drive Time Collective, for many years I played volleyball for a club in Leicester. Now, our coach should remain nameless, but he selflessly gave his time week in and week out to train us and to drive us on to play at the highest levels in the English National Volleyball League. To do this, he spent every Tuesday and Thursday evening and most weekends coaching and travelling all over the country to ensure our best performance, and did so entirely unpaid. Over the 20 years that I played, he was always there, and to this day is still, to my knowledge, coaching volleyball. Now, after weekday training sessions, naturally we would all shower and change before retiring to the bar. It is here I have to seek your forgiveness. Now, our coach was forever borrowing shower gel and toiletries. A small price to pay, you might think, for such dedication to helping us reach our optimum performance. However, this was seen as a liberty by me and another player who's as tight-fisted as I am. So much so that at one Thursday evening training session with my fellow accomplice, I conspired to end this habit of forever borrowing our shower gel. As irritating habits go, it doesn't seem that irritating, but it's clearly bothered Fat Lad and Fat Lad's friend. We sourced a bottle of suitably dark blue shower gel and emptied it of half of its contents, and proceeded to replace them with a combination of blue food colouring and blue ink, thereby creating a blue dye shower gel undetectable from the genuine article. Sure enough, at the end of training, the usual request came from our hard-working coach: Can I borrow someone's... So he's not Prince Charles. Can I borrow someone's shower gel, please? He might have been a member of the royal family. I don't know. It's another aspect to the story. Quick as a flash, the offending bottle was offered and gratefully received. Now the coach, I have to tell you, our coach was getting on a bit, and he had grey hair and he had fading eyebrows. Straight faces were kept as the lather built up, and the doctored shower gel quickly had the desired blue rinse effect. However, this was now added to by the unexpected, slightly blue-grey countenance to his complexion. Slowly but surely, his skin was turning blue. As we parted for the evening, he appeared none the wiser, despite these stifled giggles from the more juvenile amongst the team. Our coach's day job, you might like to know, was a head teacher. He was head of the local school, which meant that the following morning the permanence of the blue effect was still there for all to see, as a slightly blue-grey man with light blue hair had to present the school assembly, much to the amusement of the school and the embarrassment of our victim, who throughout the following days struggled manfully to maintain a professional decorum whilst resembling an overgrown aged smurf. He knew he was blue by now, but had to continue through the day being blue. In retrospect, he looked a bit like an X-Man. Blue skin, smart suit. His meeting with the school governors, new parents and his revision classes were the talk of the school for weeks, even months. However, clearly now, says Fat Lad, I need forgiveness on behalf of my co-conspirator and I for perpetrating the deed and dyeing a man blue, a man who selflessly gave his time and effort to enable us to better our playing abilities and take our team to the highest levels of the National League. Well, it's not a very nice way to pay your coach back, but still, we do sometimes get confessions revolving around bottles in showers, and normally, for various reasons, we're not going to broadcast them. By the way, as an extra tip, if your confession involves a criminal activity, it doesn't get on. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
If your confession involves a laxative, we've said before, it doesn't get on.
No, we'll read them though in the office, obviously.
If your confession involves, as I read one today, blowing up someone else's statue in their garden, it's not going to get on. Okay? So it all has to be legal, decent, and honest, and funny. Anyway, okay, I've digressed. Anyway, so it's back into the showers. What do we think?
Yeah, well, I know that Fat Lad said that the coach was getting on a bit, but couldn't he see that he was turning blue in the shower? He couldn't see the blue lather?
Maybe it was a light tint.
Tint, and he couldn't even see that maybe his hands were turning blue as he washed himself. Anyway, putting that to one side, I do think that this coach dedicated 20 years of his life to this volleyball team, and a bit of shower gel, for goodness sake, how stingy can you be? So I am not forgiving you, Fat Lad.
I think quite a lot of people will be with you, because I think a lot of people will go, well, you know, if he's dedicated himself to your team, give him some shower gel.
It's the least you could do.
Anyway, let's see what Brother Matthew thinks.
On the other side, though, I used to play five-a-side with a bloke who never had his own shower gel, and he would always, can I borrow some shower gel shampoo? And you thought, that, like, the first time it happens, that's fine, because, of course, there's plenty of shower gel to go round, and it doesn't cost that much. But when it's like the 8th, 9th time, buy some shower gel. How difficult is it to buy shower? Just go out and buy some shower gel. So, and yes, obviously, dedicating himself selflessly to the team, blah, blah, blah. Go and buy some shower gel. It's like £1.80 in Boots. I can't understand why you're not buying any. He couldn't have been in a worse job, could he, to be coloured blue? Oh, it's all right, because the kids won't remember that. Yep. So I am going to forgive, because frankly, people who scrounge of other people in the showers, it's time you realise what can happen.
Do you get really annoyed when I ask you whether I can borrow your pen?
Yes.
Does that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Again.
I'll be careful not to do that.
And again and again.
Tom, thank you for tonight's tale. Dear Father Simon, Primate of the Papistolic Pulpit and the posse of priestly personnel. I'm not sure if papistolic is a word, but it sounds as though it could be. After several decades, I think the time is now right to seek absolution for a teenage staff room deception. My misdemeanour occurred in the early 70s when I was a pupil at a boarding school somewhere in the north. Being neither very sporty nor particularly clever, mischief was usually my specialist subject, mischief which on this occasion disrupted a relaxing evening in the staff room. Our year groups at school did not conform to normal numbering. They had bits of the English language as titles. Sixth formers were known as poets, Oxbridge students were rhetoric, I was in syntax. The O-level year, GCSE year, and the junior years were called grammar and rudiments. Okay, so that was your year. You weren't in year 4, you were a rudiment. In year 6, you were a poet. Okay, got that? Fine.
Yeah.
In the early 70s, I hear disbelieving and unforgiving.
I think we all know how this is going to go, but do continue. Yeah.
In the early 70s, most televisions were still black and white, and invariably families only had one TV set. Also, programming was not dealt with centrally, and each region would decide what to put on and when. We had been home to the Midlands for half-term, and Dad had insisted that we watch University Challenge. It was, on this occasion, New College, Oxford against the University of Warwick, a fine establishment. Asking the questions, Bamba Gascoigne. There was a bizarre question about Dr. Johnson's pets. There was something to do with Russian composers, and there was even a question about a snake that the Prime Minister used for crisis management. At the end of half-term, we got the train back up north, where a bus was sent to collect us. Instead of getting straight on the bus with the rest of the boys, I detoured to the magazine stand. As I turned the pages of Football Monthly, to my horror, the bus went without me, and practically all my pocket money went on a taxi back to school. On arriving back at school, along with a few other tardy wretches, I was sent to stand in the Great Hall, where the portraits of the 7 old boys who had won the Victoria Cross looked down on us. Very Hogwartian, actually, this confession. There we waited to be summoned to the staff room, where the duty priest would be judge, jury and distributor of the evening's penance. In those days, punishment for schoolboy mischief was a little bit more barbaric and painful than it is today. Waiting in the Great Hall was not an entirely new experience for me, but for Percy Pimples Purser, Shrimpy McFadden and Morris Minor, it was their first time. The most feared of the priests was I've changed the name here, was Father Paddy McGinty. As I was explaining in some detail about Father Paddy's cruel streak, Percy Pimples Purser, Shrimpy McFadden and Morris Minor, who was the youngest among us, began to whimper pathetically. But we were in luck. The kind-hearted brother Boney Tony was on duty, which was a reference to the Lily the Pink song, which was a hit at the time, and he gestured for us to come forward. Nervously, we shuffled through a wall of pipe and cigarette smoke and stood at the back of the poorly lit staff room. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed that the TV was on, and it was Bamba Gascoigne asking the questions, which were quite familiar. As Morris Minor responded to Brother Tony's interrogation, Father Paddy yelped at him in a high-pitched rasp that sounded like fingers on a new guitar string. "Be quiet, boy, we're trying to listen to the questions." Oh, yeah. No idea how he sounded. Good, though. Bamba was asking, what was the name of Dr. Johnson's pet hedgehog? "Pincushion," I heard myself say, almost as startled as the assembled priests and lay staff. An art question followed. "Albrecht Dürer," I answered. this time slightly more confidently. I think I even took a step forward into the room. Other questions followed, which again I answered 100% correct. And then the music round. Not wishing to steal all the glory, I whispered the answer to Percy Pimple's purser. Dr. Eric, a bespectacled, bearded, beer-bellied baritone, and the choirmaster and head of music, sat upright in his chair and in a deep tone said, "I think you'll find that's Tchaikovsky." I nudged Percy forward and bravely he squeaked, "It sounds more like Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto to me." And he was right. We were impressing everyone, I could tell. Next, a starter question. As Bamber Gascoigne was asking the Prime Minister's snake question about Cobra, Father Paddy screeched, "Who's that boy ruining the quiz?" The buzzer went, but before the announcer could say, "Warwick Mayo," I pitched in with, "Syntax Collier," hastily followed by, "I think it's Cabinet Office Briefing Room Alpha." Wow, you could tell everyone was fantastically impressed. Father Paddy says, "Well, you are clearly some of the brightest boys in the school. Whatever you're here for, I forgive you. Now stop interrupting our programme and clear off. Back to your dormitory before I thrash the lot of you." Different days.
Different days, yeah.
Father Simon, it's not for ruining the staff room evening's entertainment that I seek forgiveness. I have carried the guilt of inflicting psychological Father Paddy cruelty trauma on Percy Pimple's purser and Shrimpy McFadden and Morris Minor for over 40 years. It is for this that I look to the papistolic pulpit of priestly personnel for absolution. We escaped punishment due improbably to independent television's regional scheduling and the fact that I'd seen the quiz before. God bless Lou Grade, says Tom Follett, the author of tonight's tale. Well, that's the thing. If you'd seen the quiz, I've had another confession about 15 years ago. I had a confession which was based on entirely the same principle. Because if you've seen the quiz in one region and then a couple of weeks later you're in another ITV region, you could watch the same thing and impress everybody by getting everything right. Sister Rebecca speaking now.
I can't believe that didn't occur to... was it Father Paddy, did you say?
Father Paddy McGinty, yes.
Right, yeah, I can't believe that it didn't occur to him that it might be because of a repeat that this chap knew all the answers.
Different days, Rebecca.
Different days. I love the nicknames, those public school nicknames. Anyway, yes, Shrimpy McFadden, Morris Minor, very witty, not. I think he got them all off detention, didn't he? So there's nothing really to forgive. I mean, Father Paddy didn't know any worse. No one was harmed. And Shrimpy and Morris and Percy, they're all fine. So was he. So I think, yeah, it was a bit of a deception, but it's not like he was promoted or made head boy or sent to a good university as a result. So it's fine. Forgive
Novice
him.
Nigel.
If only we could do this with online gambling. You know, different regions would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Yeah, just me.
Sorry, I'm not with you. So
well, if you basically cheat, you're allowed to know what the answer is. You go into a different part of the country and you get a delay on it.
They haven't had the same horse race there.
No, I know. It'd be good though, wouldn't it? I was Barden Mini Minor at school, and was.
Why was that then?
Because I was the youngest of three boys, and so Major Minor, Mini Minor, and was constantly basically punished for running down the corridor with my shirt out, or a whole variety of
Not much changes then.
No, I stood in the corner most of my school career, but I just think Tom should get an enterprise grant. Absolutely brilliant. And Father Paddy, if he was too silly to appreciate it, well, whose fault's that? No, I think they did brilliantly. And Bamber Gascoigne, that's a throwback, brilliant, marvellous to get him. And my only worrying thing is that the government's foreign policy at the time was based on let's ask for snake. Do you not remember that? He was talking about crisis management, just saying...
No, it was Cobra. That was the thing.
Maybe it was Operation Cobra.
It's named after the room where the cabinet meets.
Yeah. Well, that's
anyway, we'll move on now.
Let's ask for snake. It's Cobra. Right, see, there you go.
Okay. I think he's been on the cooking sherry.
Already?
Brother Matthew.
A special mention obviously goes to the person who decided, what should we call the priest? Oh, I know, Father Paddy McGinty.
Well, I changed it, so that's
bet
me.
You did.
No.
Yes, oh, right, okay. A big fan of all the nicknames. I have to say, my wife and son once did something similar to me in that they had watched a quiz show, and then we all decided to watch it together, and they got all the answers right. And it might have occurred to you, fiercely competitive.
Yes,
I did not find that funny at all. And so I don't find this funny either. And for that, I am not going to forgive.
And they were this week's confessions. Who did you forgive? If you have one, maybe inspired by one of the confessions you've just heard, send yours to confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week, and the Weekly Mayo is available to download right now.